This is the Lighting Fires podcast, supported by Henley Business School. Welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast and to this bonus episode. I've just been listening back to it. It's a beautiful sunny day. I'm sat in my garden and really enjoying listening to the conversation between myself and Katie Denyer. She is another practicing coach like myself, and also she teaches on the certificate programme at Henley Business School. And we explore a lot of topics that have come up in the podcast so far. We cover identity and confidence. We look at limiting beliefs and how we might want to change some of the beliefs about ourselves that are no longer serving us. And we talk about the links between mind and body and some really useful tips and tricks around tackling confidence issues. We also look at career change and some useful approaches to thinking about how you can prepare for a career change and figure out what you might want to do in future that could make you happier and feel more fulfilled. So it's a real range of different topics. I hope you enjoy it, and if you're interested in working with me on any of these topics, do get in touch, julie@lightingfires.co.uk, or contact me on LinkedIn. I hope you enjoy. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Katie. As you say, I teach on the professional certificate in executive coaching at Henley. So I do that half the week. And then the other half of the week, I also have my own coaching practice. And I'm also a supervisor and do some mentor coaching as well.
Nice, thank you. And could you tell us some of your backstory?
Yes. So my degree is in psychology and ended up on a rehabilitative psychiatric unit, and quickly realised we weren't really working with people, we were working with illness. And my fascination really is with like the person and the human. So ended up at the London College of Fashion in kind of learning and development, where they had an internal coaching network. And I think it was like my first day, I went to the induction and they were like, we've got this coaching network. Do you want coaching? And I was like, I don't know if I do right now, but I would love to be a coach on the network. Yeah. And that's kind of where it started. And then years passed and I thought the coaching really is the only part of the job I like. And then other stuff was happening in life. I was, I think, severely burnt out, and was a complete like millennial cliche, went on a yoga retreat. And I was like, I've slowed down a bit and God, I don't think I'm very happy. So came back, just left what I was doing and thought, oh gosh, like now what? And just thought, I'm quite good at coaching. I really like it. So went on to do my executive coaching course. And then it just sort of started from there. And then the role at Henley came up and that's how I landed there.
Thank you. I feel like there's quite a lot of similarities in our backgrounds,
really?
Actually. Like for myself, having spent a long time in the corporate world and also getting to a point where I was burnt out as well. So let's talk a little bit about some of the episodes of the podcast and how they bring up a lot of themes that I think as two practicing coaches we tackle with our clients a lot. And I think one of those is identity. I think that comes up all the time in different shapes and forms, and whether it's personality type work or whether it's helping people examine their values or where they're at in terms of the stage of their career and actually where they want to go to next. And really that's a bigger question about who are they becoming. And I think this has cropped up a lot in the podcast. I imagine it comes up in your work all the time.
Yeah, and I think it, like whatever someone's coming with around that, it's also like what's the real, like what's underneath that. And I think a lot of the time in my practice, I notice it's a lot about kind of confidence and like wanting to be liked. Yeah, it's like, what's that about? Like, where is that coming from? And what are some of the beliefs that people are holding about themselves that is, impacting who they think they are or how they show up.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about our clients and their identity and the the beliefs that they bring into their work and their lives now. I was talking to one of the podcast guests who explains how she used to be made to feel, or this is what she thought, that she couldn't be ambitious, she couldn't want money, she couldn't want to buy her own house, and that those weren't things that were acceptable for her to want a good salary and to ask for these things. And I imagine that some of that is kind of from a family background or from earlier roles that she's had in her life. I'm sure you must hear this kind of thing all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of when someone's bringing that into the coaching space, it's like, what's behind that? And at some point, that's kept them really safe. And then into adulthood, we are still carrying that. And maybe it has served us to some extent up until now. And now they're kind of in a space where it's like, actually, this isn't serving me anymore. So what needs updating? Sometimes I'll ask somebody, like if they're saying about going into a meeting or something, and it's something around confidence or around authority, speaking up in front of authority, I'll kind of ask, like, what age are you when you're in that meeting? And it's just really interesting that we've gone back to a place and we are not however old we are in whatever day it is now.
That's really interesting. And what do they often say?
Well, it's often a very young, usually under 10, but it'll be an experience, like we were saying earlier, like we think, oh, it can't possibly be that small thing that happened when we were that tiny. And it often is. We absorb it and it becomes part of who we are. And I think, again, we think that stays in our heads, but our body knows that story first. And so that's almost where we need to start with the work as well. It's like, what does our body need in order to feel safe? And how can we feel safe within ourselves rather than looking for that in an external, like, does this person like me? Or am I allowed to say that? Or will I look stupid if I say that? It's like, we're okay within ourselves.
And how could somebody make their body feel safe in that situation?
I think when I started doing this work, I was like, there must be some really profound thing that we must do and then everything feels fine. And it's actually just breathing, like taking a pause and I guess noticing when we go into certain situations, our body is probably having a response, like whether that's tension, we get hot, butterflies, like racing heart. So just, I guess, taking the time to notice that and like get from a dysregulated place to a physical regulated place. And when our body feels that, then it travels up to like us thinking differently. So that, and then I also think there's something about what situation am I projecting onto this? Like, where is this come from? If you're going into a big meeting and you have to present, like, is it, I'm thinking I'm back at school and I've got to stand up in front of class and like do something. So I guess reflecting on like what your triggers might be and where that takes you, and then really getting in touch with what's happening in my body and how can I soothe it physically. Maybe go on a walk before you go and present, or it's to get yourself back into a regulated state.
If you're listening to this and you're interested in training as a coach, I can highly recommend the Professional Certificate in Executive Coaching, or even the Masters at Henley Business School. It is the best investment I have made in myself and my business. The course is led by research, so it has academic rigour, and the tools and techniques you learn are highly practical. You get the opportunities to practice, you build confidence. I also gained friendships for life, a community that's continued to support me. I can highly recommend it. So if you decide to take the plunge and contact Henley, do mention the Lighting Fires podcast. So I'm thinking about a neurolinguistic programming technique that I sometimes would use with people. which would be a circle of excellence, in which you would ask people to imagine a time when they have felt really confident, they're really buzzing, they're really sure of themselves. And by thinking about it, they're allowing themselves to connect with that in their imagination, but also in their bodies too. They're feeling it in their body. And they kind of step into this imaginary circle. They have to kind of be prepared to go with this, because sometimes it feels a bit out there for people. I did have somebody once who said, Julie, I don't like forced fun. And I was like, that's fine, we can do this another way. But by kind of stepping into that kind of version of yourself and imagining a new situation that you're going into, so for example the presentation, but bringing to life this really confident, powerful version of yourself. And then sometimes I will add in another NLP technique, such as an anchor. So I'll get them to, at the moment when they're feeling absolutely brilliant in this kind of stepped into this circle, I'll get them to do something that works for them, that will help them reconnect to that really fast. So for some people, they might just turn their collar, for example, or just put their hair behind their ears, something that they could really easily do discreetly that will help them reconnect with that right at the moment when they really need it most. That seems to be really effective. I guess that plays to what you're saying about the body aspect.
Yeah, and there's something similar, I guess, I do with it's in the somatic kind of coaching space, in getting people to get into the position of I'm going into that situation, like how does their body feel like, so they really feel like the whatever that sensation is, and then shake that off and then get into how would you like to be, getting them to really get in tune with how they're holding their body and how that feels. Because I think if we can get in touch with more of our embodied state, that's much more likely to last and be more sustainable than kind of the plaster, I'll just tell myself I've got this, or some other affirmation. Our body has to actually believe it too. So kind of similar, I guess, in some ways.
I love that technique. That's a brilliant one. Okay, so I remember in one of the podcast episodes, there's a guy called Pete, and it's actually the first episode, and he has experienced a lot in his lifetime, and he came to coaching probably initially thinking that it was more about business coaching, but really coming to realise that he needed to do a lot of work on himself. And we had some conversations about his sense of purpose, and he talked about a moment when he went back to his hometown of Ipswich, and he went back to the park where he spent a lot of time growing up, and he enjoyed climbing all the trees. And for him, he suddenly remembered that this is why he went into the work that he does, which is forestry. And he's just always had this passion for trees and the natural environment. And I think that was really powerful for him, kind of realising that he'd got to the point in his business where the business had grown, he'd taken on more and more people, and actually he was sitting behind a desk most of the time and not really enjoying that, and actually still being able to do some of the technical work is what made him kind of tick. And I hear that quite a lot in people as they move into kind of more management positions. They end up letting go of the work they actually really love and they really enjoy and brings them joy. So I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts on that kind of identity work that we do as coaches.
That made me think, when people come and they're thinking of a career transition as well, what they've been doing just isn't kind of lighting them up in the same way, and doing, I guess, a more holistic look at when you ask for somebody's strengths and they list people find it really hard for a start. I know I definitely would have been oh. But thinking about that in work, I'm organised or good at diary management, but taking a much wider lensed look at that and what do you do that you enjoy in life, what are you interested in, what makes you feel alive, what would your friends say about you? And so you just get a much bigger picture of who you are, and how once you've started looking at, these are my values, this is what I really enjoy doing. Yeah, like we need to feel like a sense of belonging and that we fit into an organisation as well. So yeah, who are we, and like who are you as an organisation, and do I belong? I mean, I think that's the ultimate humanity question, is it?
Yeah,
like, do I belong here?
Absolutely. Do my values match up to the organisation's real values, not just the ones that they say they have as well?
Yeah, and we can be much more discerning with the type of job we're going for or the type of organisation. So I think it's very easy to not look at that stuff and just end up in a role or become a person, and we're like, no, who am I really, like at my core? Because something's feeling off. And I always think, like, if people are saying like something's not feeling right, it's like, what have we perhaps abandoned within ourselves, or we're not looking at, or we've hidden? So yeah, bringing some of that to the surface.
That's interesting. So I'm reflecting on one of the episodes in Series 1, Episode 6, and we only did a single coaching session. She's a friend of mine, and she had at the time just discovered that her husband had early onset dementia, and she was also becoming increasingly unhappy in her job. So in the coaching session, the objective really was to try and help her figure out what she wanted to do in terms of work, what was going to give her some kind of satisfaction and a sense of belonging, because the piece about belonging was really starting to go amiss as this company she worked for was getting bigger. She felt she didn't really have so much of a voice anymore. So we looked at two things. We looked at times in her life and in her past jobs when she had felt happy and what she'd enjoyed doing, and what she felt she was good at. And she talked a lot about her work in the Met Police, which you could see she still had a real connection to that as an organisation. But even, just when she was lifeguarding as a teenager, and, she'd really enjoyed that. So, like you say, kind of asking wider questions about one's life and what you enjoy doing and what's meaningful. But also we looked at her values as well, and I think that was really helpful for her. And I find it incredible that those kind of fairly simple questions can be so powerful for somebody.
Yeah, and I think it's just not the kind of question we would get in a normal conversation, is it? True, really? Which is, I think, one of the real beauties of coaching. It's not only then them hearing themselves talk about values, whatever it is, and being able to kind of be like, oh, I've never heard myself say that or think about it in that way. So they can start to make links. And then us alongside them, we can start to be like, oh, I'm hearing this, or like, I wonder if there's a link there, or you've mentioned this in a few times in different ways. And so we can support them in piecing together that picture a little bit. And I think sometimes we also think about identity as being quite rigid. It's like, I am who I am. And actually it can be a lot more malleable. Like we change, like if we have the space to. I know I've changed massively, like in huge ways through the years. So yeah, we don't have to be so fixed.
Yeah. I think I really like that idea of identity being malleable, because then it feels like you can have a bit more fun with figuring it out, can't you? You can see it more as a bit of an exploration of trying things out, seeing how they feel. And that feels to me much kind of looser and lighter as a piece of work.
Yeah, I guess when I've had a play with that and I'll do something a bit different, I'm like, oh no, like reverse, that did not feel good. Or then you might try something else, you're like, oh, actually, I might expand into that a little bit more, play with that a bit more.
Yeah, and I do think it's quite important to continue to do some of this work ourselves as coaches. The story of making this podcast, I felt like an imposter. I kept thinking, what have I got to say? Who am I to think that I could make podcasts? But the process has been really good for me to keep stretching myself, I think. And I spoke to a therapist once about this. She was absolutely brilliant at what she did. And she was in her late 60s at the time. And I said to her, do you ever feel like you don't need to work on yourself anymore, that the work can stop? And she was like, no, I feel like I'm continuing. It's like going up the next stage of a spiral staircase. It just keeps going, keeps going. I think that is just the human story, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think how there's a real beauty and wonder in that, I think, and linking that back to identity. I think for me anyway, I'm always finding out new things about myself and finding out things that I can change, that I can let go of. And I think we are continually evolving.
Yeah.
We change with different things that happen. Yeah.
Are you feeling stuck and need some help moving forwards? At Lighting Fires, I work with business leaders, future leaders and their teams to ignite their full leadership potential. Whether you're a business owner or leading in an organisation, we can work together to create a programme tailored to your priorities. Throughout our coaching together, I see my clients' confidence and capabilities grow as they gain a greater understanding of how they work, learn to make quicker decisions, and develop a vision for their role and a plan on how to get there. Through the challenges and the breakthroughs, you'll have me by your side. Get in touch on LinkedIn or email me, julie@lightingfires.co.uk. So I'm remembering back in the early days of becoming a coach, I really wanted to be good at coaching. I really wanted to be like a role model for people, but that's not actually what clients require of us. I think I've learned since then that it's okay to just be your human self and to show a bit of vulnerability occasionally when it's appropriate. I think that's a big lesson as a coach, actually, as you kind of move through clients and build experience, is that the most important thing is for you to know all your tools and techniques and your questions, but also just to be able to let go of all of that and just be very present.
Yeah. And I think, as also what is useful. So I think we often think being useful is giving something or offering something. And actually there's something in holding that space. It's such an art. And to be able to hold a space where someone can do that kind of thinking. And I know I notice when I'm with someone where I can just think. And I'm noticing it here. I can think really well with you, and that's really nice. But there will be other spaces where that's not held. And I think sometimes it just is that someone can have a space to talk about it. And so, sometimes it is just that space to explore. One of the gifts of coaching is being able to hold that space where somebody can do that depth and breadth of thinking. And that's useful.
Because it's so rare,
Yeah.
isn't it? And actually, I went through the transcripts of all the podcast recordings, and the theme that comes out time and time again is people said they really valued the space and the time to think. It's actually that simple in the end. Katie, I found this conversation really fascinating. Thank you for joining. And it feels a bit like I'm back on the kind of coaching certificate or master's programme, because we're talking about the theory, we're talking about the practice, and it was a very kind of happy time for me, and I really enjoyed being there. So, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you.
Really nice to talk to you too. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this bonus episode of the podcast. I think it gives a brilliant flavour of the type of content that you cover on the Henley certificate programme. So if you're interested in that, please go ahead and contact Henley Business School. Or if you're interested in talking to me about any of these topics, then feel free to get in touch. julie@lightingfires.co.uk. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a 5-star rating so others just like you can find me and benefit from these stories.